thank you very much for joining us in this call to record your opinions really and your feedback on a project which we have been conducting and that we would like to present to the Irish community. So we are doing this because we're participant in a project which is a Horizon 2020 project. You know that name, it's the name given to a very large funding scheme of the European Union. It's coming to an end now, but there will be another funding instrument put in place. So the project we're talking about is called Eco2, which is energy conscious consumers. And it's a project which is really determined to try to change the pattern and the habits and pattern of consumption, of energy consumption of the European population, really, and to try to do this not in a way which is imposing rules and sanctions, but which is participative and asking people essentially how they think that it can be done. And so the project has a number of partners, I think 9 partners, and recruiting more partners to try to go into more countries in Europe. And it's been running for a couple of years because we were involved in a particular task that we were conducting, which was the development of a dynamic knowledge sharing platform, which we have called Act4Eco, which is supposed to, or which is intended to facilitate knowledge sharing among consumers and experts in the area of the wise use of energy. So there are a couple of elements in the project, but essentially there is a community building element where we try to get in touch with as many consumers as we can and as many experts as we can locally, so that the conversation can be very rich. And then the Act4Eco platform itself is really a way that we can do an intervention and try to make changes or implement changes in 5 important directions. So there is change the house to limit the carbon footprint of houses by improving energy performance. There is smart consumers, which aims to familiarize users with options for controlling their energy consumptions. And then there is also a no rebound intervention, which is to try to avoid the return to bad energy consumption habits once they have been changed. And then there's a final one, which is make your own energy, which is to try to guide consumers towards seeing, is there any possibility that they might invest in small scale energy generation for their own purpose? So this is the project itself, and joining me on this call, I have a number of experts that I would like to ask some questions to try to seek their feedback. So I'm going to take each of you guys in turn, if that's okay. So I would like to turn to Charlotte Colby, who is actually a member of the Danish Board of Technology and who is the Eco2 Project, the project partner in Denmark. And Charlotte, I would like to ask you, what do you think is the public attitude to climate change at this point in time? Do you think it's people are well disposed, or what stage do you think we're at?
Well, I think that people are really worried. A year and a half ago, the former government lost the election because they called them climate idiots. One of the partners in the coalition called the people who care about the climate were called climate idiots or something similar. But at the same time, I think that, and I speak also for my personal experience, that we have this apocalypse fatigue. It's a phrase that has been coined by a climate psychologist from Norway, Per Espen Stoknes, where there is a limit to how many times you can hear that the apocalypse is coming. And in the end, if it's not coming right away and you know it will come, then you just stop listening. So it's really important that when for every one bad news, you have 3 good news. And this is what I think is one of the good things about this Act4Eco, Eco2 project, that we're trying to give people a way to react, because they are really concerned about climate and climate change.
Okay. And have you seen this in Denmark? Or do you think this is reasonably general in Europe at the moment? Are people on the same page?
When you look at what the news outlets are writing about, I think people are really concerned. When we had the big climate COP15 in Denmark, I was writing for a newspaper, and up till the summit, there was no limit to the numbers of articles you could write about climate change. But then immediately after, we didn't have a solution, we didn't reach an agreement, and my editor said, no, we have now reached climate nausea. We cannot publish anything more about the climate. So for 2 years, I didn't write any articles about the climate. But I think we cannot close our eyes.
Okay, so there is good news on the way. Perhaps, how do you think that the Act4Eco platform might come to play a role in this?
Because when you try to fight your desperation, and when you try to fight off your anxiety, you would like to act. And this is what Act4Eco actually, it gives you the means to act in a comprehensible way, and it is validated by experts. So you don't have to go into that jungle and try to find out, so is it best to change my windows, or should I change the heating of my house, or whatever. We have it in Act4Eco. This work has been done. It's been done at a European level, and it's been validated by experts. And it's really easy. It's a really easy way, step by step. You can do this and this and this. You should be aware of this and this and this. So you don't have to fight to get the information, and you don't have to fight to be able to do something.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And I would like now to turn to Aideen McLaughlin, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Good Energies Alliance Ireland, GEAI. And Aideen, how are you?
I'm very well, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to speak at this meeting. It's really interesting.
So do you want to maybe explain a tiny bit what the GEAI is and what kind of projects you're involved with at the moment?
Okay, I'll give you a tiny snapshot of our history. First of all, that we were founded in 2011 as a response to a project that was proposed for the area to introduce fracking into the area, to drill about 1,000 wells, and to basically completely change the landscape and the well-being of all the people here. So we were set up as a company limited by guarantee, a non-profit organization, and our focus was always on sources of energy. So whereas we were totally opposed to fracking, we were also supportive of renewable energy. And we had help coming from the Erasmus program, because we've hosted European volunteers every year that we have been in operation, and they have been of great help to us. But we actually focused very much on social media and campaigning through advocacy, political lobbying, research, making sure all our facts were right, reaching out to communities, giving presentations and writing reports. And in fact, we were also working with other communities on the ground in this area. And the result of all of that was that Ireland passed legislation to ban fracking. And that was a fantastic achievement as far as we were concerned. But then obviously we had our second zone of activity was to support renewable energy. So we turned our attention more to that. And we've done a lot on the ground to raise awareness of renewable energies, to survey communities, see what they're doing, what their actual practice is at the moment, and then carrying out various projects to improve the situation. And maybe Nick can actually come in on that with some of the projects we have actually what we've actually carried out.
Okay, so yes, because you're also joined by Nick Treya, who is
right.
Part of the same organization, and who is you're a project manager or a research officer, Nick. Do you want to tell us about your role?
I was one of the European volunteers last year that Aidan mentioned. I joined the Good Energies Alliance Ireland in May 2019. And from that time, I couldn't just stop working with in the rural, in deep rural Ireland. I guess we are based in County Leitrim, and at the moment I have finished my Erasmus Plus year, and I am a development and research officer at GAI. And yeah, I can sure tell you and give you a little overview of our main projects that were developed since last year. Aidan mentioned that we carried on a lot of household energy surveys in the area. So especially in the northwest, we surveyed 9 towns located in County Leitrim, County Sligo, County Roscommon, and County Donegal. Yeah, the surveys were very comprehensive to the extent that they provided the full overview of the energy landscape of the household. They were carried on by the volunteers via, a doorstep interview to the householder. And the surveys were designed by IT Sligo, which is Institute of Technology based in County Sligo. So it was designed basically by energy engineers and energy researchers. And IT Sligo with Good Energies Alliance did the subsequent analysis of the results. But we didn't stop there, because we also modeled a community transition roadmap for each one of these towns. So since we had interviewed 10% of the households, we had pretty good sample, pretty good diversified sample of households, and we could draw from that sample some scenarios, some trends regarding energy savings and avoided emissions for if the household would have undertook a series of improvements, for example, in the area of house improvements. So here you have your insulation, your double glazing, renewable energy on site, and so on, but also behavioral change. So just and this is where we really align with Act4Eco in terms of enabling the energy consumer to be more conscious of the energy he or she is consuming, be more wise, so be his or her own energy manager in the house. And we also looked at transport. So we had a lot of information that could be modeled. And for example, for the town that I was in charge of modeling, Boyle in County Roscommon, we found out that the community could save 4 millions. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aidan, on the figure.
Okay, yeah.
4 million euros in 6 years, if they developed a series of very, very easy and high return on investment measures. So yeah.
The point that you're making, Nick, is that in the first instance, if we're at the start of this journey, in the first instance, there is some really common sense measures that can be implemented that are going to deliver some disproportionately positive outcomes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we've worked with schools as well in delivering climate action days and getting the young people, the 15-year-olds transition year, getting them to do small projects. And some of them chose renewable energies as well. So we had a survey of a school and the possibility to put up solar panels. And I think that was important, if only to raise consciousness, awareness of what is possible, and also the financial supports that are available for people, whether they're households or schools, to actually do this.
So you guys are probably reasonably happy that that projects such as Eco2 and the development of the Act4Eco platforms are reasonably well aligned with your ambition and your
Completely, yes. I was actually taken aback, in fact, when I saw the Act4Eco website, because it aligned so almost perfectly with some of the work that we are doing with our website, and very much the same subjects being addressed. But what you have done is, in fact, produced, I think, a more user-friendly, or a way of bringing the knowledge to the people that is suitable for the whole community. It's not just for people who are interested in technology, it's for everyone. And I really was very impressed with the work that you're doing. And I think that is going to inform how we in turn communicate what we're doing. And so there is great synergy there. I'm delighted to be part of this.
Well, to thank you for the compliment, Aidan. I think I would take that as a very positive sign.
Yeah.
And just to say that one of the findings of the project really is that we have discovered that it's very hard to do this in a universal fashion. And so your action at the local level is really absolutely very important, because we've discovered that in different countries in Europe, the level of awareness at this point in time is really varied, such that if you try to develop material for everyone, to inform everyone equally in Europe, it's not going to be very fruitful, because some people might actually consider that to be, like for school children, and whereas for other people it will already be too advanced for their needs. So I think it's important to carry on the work at the local level, and only the feedback that we get from you guys can allow us to calibrate at a sort of a national level what interventions should be undertaken.
Yeah.
So that's excellent. Thank you very much. So I would like to try to bring everybody into the call, and I would like to turn to Sarah Fogarty, who is from Community Power. Sarah, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Pleasure. I'm just wondering if I can ask you the same questions that I asked Aidan and Nick, and to try to explain to us what you're doing.
Sure. I think we'll start with where we are now and work backwards. It's probably easier to try and explain. So you can see behind me here, we are Community Power, and we are an Irish electricity supplier. But we're not just any Irish electricity supplier. We are community owned 100%. And our mission and our goal is to educate more communities to join in 100%. So I suppose from generating your own renewable energy to having it being 100% community owned, and that community actually benefiting from it. We know how to do that because we were the first ones to do it in Ireland, in a small little village in the middle of Tipperary, Templederry wind farm. And it was kind of miraculous, really, that it got through and that it was community owned with a lot of help and a lot of support. But it took years. And there was so much tape around it and so much barriers put up. But I suppose the natural process of things was it was connected to the grid in 2012. and it was up. It has been up and running. It's about 8 years in progress at the moment, and it's proven very fruitful. And we, I suppose, have the expertise in how to do it. So we willingly try and help other communities in Ireland to do the same thing, whether it's solar or wind or whatever the community's preference is. And we help them get through a very big process that we have fought for in government to be a part of, to have the communities be a part of the overall electricity board. And we have been successful in having 2 more communities next year generating and installing their own solar parks. So that's really, really amazing. There's one in Claremorris in Mayo, and that used to be an old dump site, never to be used again. So, and I mean, each one of those projects, they're not small. Like, I mean, there's about, it could be anything up to about 30,000 panels on each one of those. So, I mean, it's huge support for the community. When that has paid itself back in however many years, whatever is going to be generated by it, they can then put that back into the community for further developments. So it's just a matter of really, and I know your Act4Eco is really about educating people and the communities and bringing them with you and letting them be a part of a project 100%, you know, and asking the right questions, not being afraid to ask the right questions. And we have the other solar farm is in Dunmore in Galway, another small village again, and it'll definitely benefit in 7 or 8 years' time. That'll be really, really successful for them. And this year, going into the Renewable Energy Support Scheme, they have to get through this process in Ireland. We have so many more communities now in with us that we're bringing into the next round for next year. So we're kind of a little bit in demand, if I should say so myself. So we have a lot going on, but it's exciting because I suppose when I'm here in the office, I'm in Nina and Tipperary. I deal with phone calls every day. So what I have noticed personally is, you know, even the homeowners are starting to ask questions. That's huge, you know. So our mission is, I suppose, there's only one, we call it electricity pool in Ireland, and it's full of fossil fuels, full. But even though we've loads of renewable projects in Ireland, so we're the ones that are asking the questions, why? And with the communities that we can build up and have generating their own renewable energy, we would hope that that would allow our electricity pool to become more renewable. And if that is the case, then we don't have to pay millions in 2030 for not reaching target goals. Our electricity target goal for 2030 is 70% renewable energy. I think we have less than 20% renewable in our electricity pool at the moment. So I'm like, why aren't people panicking? Why aren't people asking questions? I don't understand, but they are. People really are starting to wonder where it's coming from. Where is their electricity coming from? Why isn't it Irish? You know, why isn't it local? Why isn't it their community? If it is their community, how can it be done? And I suppose that's where we really come into it as well. And then we can buy it and sell it and just kind of keep the full circle in Ireland until we can build a bit of momentum for it to do whatever is next, really. So
can I just ask you, Sarah, in terms of scale? You know that first site that you had in Tipperary.
Sure.
What scale were we talking about at this stage?
4.6 megawatts.
And how many the needs of how many people did that sustain?
Okay, so to give you an idea of our little town, it's not little actually. Nina's quite big, but there's 8,000 roughly of a population in Nina, and they would say it would cover about 65 to 70% of the households in Nina in that town, if it was required.
It is very substantial, and that was only one site.
Yeah, and it was so difficult to go through the processes of it, just for a community to benefit. Mm-hmm. But it was successful. So we have worked with government. We've worked with as many people as we can to make that process faster and faster and faster. So I think they're kind of getting used to our name now. Every time they hear of us, they're like, oh no.
I think Aidan and Sarah, you have something in common, which is that you started your work out of a local concern.
Yes.
But
Yes.
both of you managed to escalate the agenda to the national level, because Aideen, you managed to get the fracking interdiction, the fracking ban voted in Ireland. And Sarah, now you are trying to go into, by contagion, going into other areas at
Yes.
the national level.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. And it's exciting. You know, it's actually really nice to be a part of it. We always say, you know, there's utility companies for, sure, there's loads of us really, but I would say that we're a movement. We're trying to bring the people with us and trying to get everyone in over the line together. And that's really rewarding when you see it coming to fruition. It's really sad. It's hard work, but it's satisfying.
So you would be happy enough with the Act4Eco platform?
100%.
The project is well aligned with what you're trying to do, isn't it?
Absolutely. Anyone who's willing to ask questions and to do some research and dig a bit deeper and bring people along with you, absolutely 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask, go back to Aideen and Nick, and I'd like to ask you, what is it that surprises you the most? Have you an incredible story or an incredible statistics about the use of energy in Ireland?
I'm not sure whether it's an incredible story. It surprised me anyway. And this was when we were doing the surveys. Now it's all in the Northwest, you know, Leitrim, Roscommon, Sligo, Donegal. But the high level of solid fuel being used for heating, and in particular, the high use of peat in households, that actually did surprise me. I wasn't you know, I wasn't expecting that. And the ones that weren't using solid fuel, such a high dependence on oil, and that they're all kind of negative things that surprised me when we were doing the surveys. But the positive side of that was that people were really interested in what we were doing. And I was very encouraged by that. People were asking questions and they did show interest. Also a bit of frustration about all the red tape, if you like, or the wheels, you know, the journey between an energy concept and actually getting it off the ground is still too long. It really is. It's too complicated. And that's one of the things that we are actually going to be turning our attention to now. Is there a way of streamlining this on a local level? So
I think Sarah is probably agreeing with you there on that particular point. And Nick, how about you, Nick? Any surprising story?
I might add the fact that this is a very miserable statistics that I have recently been recently come across, and is the fact that the housing stock in our area, in our county, Leitrim, apparently is the poorest in Ireland in terms of heat retention, in terms of heating leakage. If you look at the BER, the Building Energy Regulations, which is a standard to determine the energy performance of a building, even if there is some dissent on that matter from from vernacular architects and vernacular architecture advocates. They say BER is not really the best instrument, the best tool to assess traditional buildings, but yeah, I mean the statistics are clear, and they say that here in this part of Ireland we waste huge amounts of precious energy, heating energy, through our walls, through our roofs and windows.
Mm-hmm.
So that has changed.
fireplaces.
Sarah, any surprising fact? What grabbed your attention lately in the area of energy?
Yeah, well, mine is I'm on repeat with it, is the amount of energy and electricity we buy from abroad and we don't produce and use ourselves in Ireland. The lack of Irish renewable electricity that we use and that we create for our own network, you know, that's shocking to me. How you know. But yeah, that's something that I would go on for hours speaking about.
And I mean, we have a commodity in Ireland which few people have to the extent that we do, which is the wind. I mean,
Yes.
always
Wind,
wind in
yeah.
Ireland. Surely we can do something with it.
Yeah,
And
if it's-
ocean.
and ocean, and if it's not windy, there's probably a bit of light and a bit of sun, so between the two, you know, you'll definitely, I mean, there's so many things we can do, and there are a lot of projects in Ireland. You know, there is a lot of renewable projects, but you know, the Irish people in our pool doesn't really gain from it yet, and that's kind of the shocking part.
Okay. Charlotte, any famous last words that you would have for us?
Yeah, we're talking about wind energy, and I was thinking the same thing. It's wind in Ireland and it's wind in Denmark as well. And actually, in 2015 already, there was 24 hours where Denmark was running solely on wind energy.
Wow.
But so that's 5 years ago. It was in July. So I mean, it is obtainable, and the alternatives are so much cleaner and they are so much healthier, not just in a climate perspective, but also for human perspective and for the environment. So it's just, we should just get on. And then one thing is also, I'm really happy to how you have received Act4Eco, the Act4Eco website. And the idea was all along that we wanted to create a transformation, and real change you can only get through knowledge. So when people really understand how and the why, and then you show them the actions they can actually take, you get change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fantastic. So we had a very good chat. I'm very grateful that you were all able to join. And of course, for anyone who has listened to these interviews and this talk, and who is interested in the topics that we have discussed, we are now going to propose that to insist, in fact, that you do log into the Act4Eco platform, and that you create a login, and that you experience the interactive nature of the platform that we have created, so that you can actually go further than the little discussion that we have had over the last half an hour, and you can explore the platform. So I think the name of the platform is probably going to be provided on screen, and all you have to do is click on that link and create a login, and then you can go and look at the questions that are being answered for you on the website. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all on this call. You're very welcome to join us to talk about the Eco2 project, where Eco2 stands for Energy Conscious Consumers. And Eco2 is a H2020 project. We call it H2020 this large-scale EU funding program for research, for which we got funding from, to explore how we can raise awareness among the public in Europe for more sustainable use of energy generally. So the Eco2 project has a number of partners, and some of those partners are actually with us on the call. They will answer some of my questions in a minute. But one of the key elements, there were a number of phases in the Eco2 projects, but the key element of it is the development of a platform, which we have called Act4Eco, which we have spent quite a bit of time developing, and which can be used as a source of information on how to have a more sustainable use of consumption at the level of individuals. So individuals can log onto the platform, and they can access a number of areas in the platform where they can get information on changing their household, being smarter consumers, understanding the parameters in their energy consumption, and even creating maybe their own energy at home using some basic technologies that are available. So that's the platform that everyone is free actually to go and and use that platform by creating a login and going in to see what can be done, what they can do at their own level. Now, with me on the call, I have a number of experts, and these experts involve Salim Mebratu, who is from SDS. They are an innovation, an energy solution innovation consultant based in Brussels. Salim, you can introduce yourself better in a minute. We have Sotiris Papadélis, who is from EBS, who are also an energy consultant, an innovation lab, I think, in Greece. And then we have Xavier Dubuisson, who is a member of XD Consulting, who are an energy solution consultant. And again, you guys can introduce yourself better in a minute. This is just to introduce yourself briefly. So I would like to turn to you, Salim, and I would like to ask you a few questions on, would you be able to share with us some simple solutions that people can save energy and money in the home? Is there anything that can be said about appliances in terms of choice of appliances? What's the state of the art in terms of labeling and these sort of things?
Exactly. Thank you, Professor Frederick. So just to begin with, I'm Salam, a designer in a design agency and an innovation lab based in Brussels called Strategic Design Scenarios. And as you mentioned, we also work on energy-related projects. So coming to your question, especially in terms of labels, we emphasize in Act4Eco that energy labels are very important because they actually help consumers choose the right appliances, electrical appliances for their home. And for instance, in the way that the energy labels are graded, which is currently from D to A++++, there is some kind of confusion that's been created from the A to A+++, because they're quite important, as in there's a 20% difference in energy consumption between classes that are A+ and A++. Each time we add a plus, there's a 20% less energy consumed with an appliance. And actually now, a lot of people currently struggle to tell the difference between appliances in the different class A's. So initially it was only from A to D, but each plus was actually added because the technology got more advanced and more efficient. So they had to add the plus, and it kind of had distorted the way consumers understand the meaning of these energy labels. So at the European level, there is actually action that is going to be taken. In mid-2021, energy labels will gradually get rid of the A's with the plus to return to the initial classification, which is now going to be calibrated from A to G, which will be more rigorous and a clearer version of the energy label. And just to add a last point about the energy labels, beyond providing information on the appliances' overall energy consumption and also water consumption, each energy label for each appliances have also additional information, for example, about the noise rating and so on. And all of these informations are described in the Act4Eco platform. So I invite all the users to go under the action, manage your energy consumption, the power of household appliances to read more about it.
Okay, so fantastic. So that's in terms of choice. If you're in the shop and you want to maybe replace some of your appliances, how about once you have brought them home? Then there's a tiny bit of confusion in relation to charging cables and switches left on and so on and so forth. What can you tell us about that?
Definitely. To actually maintain a low energy consumption, there are a lot of hacks consumers can actually implement that don't always require to spend a lot of money or resources. They can, for example, make sure to properly maintain the appliances that they have at home. We can take one example that is mentioned in the Act4Eco platform, which is the freezer. Consumers should actually defrost, for example, their freezer or the freezer that is in the compartment of their fridge at least once a year, or more often if ice tends to build up more often, because just as a fact, 2 millimeters of ice means the appliance consumes about 10% more energy. So just by actually maintaining it properly, they can reduce their energy consumption. They can also, if we stay in the example of the freezer, they can regularly dust the radiator that is located on the back to make sure there's good ventilation with the appliance. And they can also check if the doors close properly. Otherwise, they're going to have to repair the different ceilings on the fridge. And one last point, which might be a little obvious, but if they're going for a vacation for a long term, they should, of course, empty the whole fridge and make sure to leave it open so that they don't, and also unplug it to make sure that they don't use it during their absence.
And I guess there is maybe something that appears to be off-putting for at least some people, which is that they associate trying to reduce their energy consumption with not really using the appliances to the full. But you're making the point that actually that's not true. You can enjoy the appliances to their fullest extent and still save energy. Exactly,
completely. And there are also other elements. For example, to reduce energy consumption, consumers should also adopt a rational energy use and reduce the use of some of their appliances also. They should fully use some of the appliances, but they should also make sure in terms of behavior, reduce some of the appliances that they should use. For example, if they can do 1 or 2 loads of laundry weekly rather than 3, that's a good point. If they can enjoy, for example, natural light more often, and then avoid turning on the lights as it gets darker, that's one good point. If they can wear 1 more layer instead of increasing the temperature on the thermostat, that's another good point. Or also pull the plug on the appliances that are actually on standby. That's the last point is quite important, because the problem with standby appliances is that I don't know whether there might be a confusion, but it keeps drawing power. We actually call them energy vampires. And it actually same goes for all those chargers that stay plugged, whether or not a device is charging. They consume small amounts of energy, and we should keep in mind that a whole house full of them can add up to a noticeable amount on our monthly electricity bill. And I mean, I understand it's hard to get into the habit of unplugging everything after we finish using them. But now there are a number of gadgets on the market that can do it for us instead. These are, for example, the energy saving main controllers, which automatically switch off your devices when turned off. And there are also other systems called switch systems that completely cut the power also whenever we don't use some of the appliances.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. I myself have that at home because my children go around behind me and turn everything off. So that's a good habit that they have. It's generational. I am a dinosaur. Okay, thank you very much. So can I turn to Satiris? And can I ask you a few questions? Do you want to introduce yourself as an organization and your services?
Yes, of course. So, HIPS or IBIS, which is another way to call it, is a Greek company. We operate in the interface between data analytics and energy efficiency. And the whole idea is how you take all these very interesting business models, contractual arrangements, etc., that work for energy efficiency at project level and scale it up to program level. Very briefly, that's it.
Okay, very good. I was actually muted there by mistake. So I wanted to ask you some questions on how people can actually reduce their carbon footprint and save money as well. So what about houses and insulation?
First of all, insulation. One way to think about energy efficiency is as an option. So it creates the ability to do things that you could not before that. Why I'm saying this? Because in many cases, insulation is expensive, and the analysis that you do in terms of payback period, when I will get my money back, it seems quite long. But in many cases, it's the wrong calculation. For instance, I will take the Greek case. In Greece, most buildings are very inefficient. So during the winter, what you have is heating during few hours in the day where people are usually at home, and with an attempt, let's say, to balance between living in a comfortable environment and saving money, because both natural gas and even more fuel oil are expensive due to cut taxes. And if you take this constrained use, these little hours per day, and use the same example, the same paradigm, but in a more efficient house, it may seem that, okay, it's not that of a great investment. But the thing is, an efficient house allows you to use more heating without more expenses. There is this usual phrase that says that if you reduce your thermostat by 1 degree, you will get this percent of savings, 10, 20%, etc. Now, the reality is the more efficient, actually, the more well-insulated your house is, the less it matters where you put the thermostat. So, in one way, energy efficiency frees you from having this burden to rationalize, let's say, heating in terms of thermostat settings and in terms of heating hours. So it actually improves the living environment, while again improving both carbon footprint and reducing savings. And also another way to think of insulation as an option is that all the modern heating system, doesn't matter if it's modern natural gas boilers or heat pumps, work well when you tend to use your system for lower temperatures and longer hours. And this cannot be done in uninsulated houses. In uninsulated houses, you need the opposite. You need to crank up the system so that for a few hours you get a comfortable environment, and then you go to sleep. So it's actually, if you see it at the right perspective, it is a good investment. At the same time, it's something you cannot do alone. Okay, it's better to go to a contractor. There are a lot of options. The industry knows very well how to insulate houses in a very cost-efficient way. Some ideas about the options that one has can be found in the platform. So if one goes to the Act4Eco and goes to the improving my house category of actions, they can find ideas of both the materials, for instance, that you can use one for insulating a house. The places, I mean, in the cell of the building, that insulation makes more sense. But all of these are actually a step for consumers to feel comfortable to interact with the contractor. This is not something that you do in a DIY mode.
And are there options for smart metering as well that may make sense for most people?
Smart metering. Again, smart metering is an option. That means that by itself, it doesn't offer much. What it actually offers is insight. Where you have smart meters, you can actually have better insight in your consumption in terms of hourly intervals, in terms of being able to experiment. This is something that cannot be done when you get a bill every month. And this creates opportunities to understand your consumption, and by understanding it, you can actually find ways to become more energy efficient. So again, something that can be used to increase energy efficiency. By itself alone, just installing a smart meter won't change much. It needs to have a behavioral part too.
Tell me, would I be right in thinking that in Greece, the use of solar panels makes a lot of sense? But does it make sense in other places as well?
Well, yes, in most places. One thing that is interesting about solar PV is that, okay, there's always this argument that not all buildings are suitable for installing solar PV. That's true. Okay. For instance, apartment blocks, if you come to Athens, it's very difficult to install. But now you see a shift in terms of ideas such as energy communities, such as virtual metering and virtual net metering, where you can actually have solar PVs installed somewhere else that makes sense to install it, and then actually subtract the generated power from your consumption. And these innovations, and it's actually part of the regulation now in Greece, and I'm pretty sure it is, or it's becoming part of the regulation in other European countries. It is a very good opportunity for people to benefit from solar PVs, even if they cannot install it on their own house. Now, if you go very north, okay, maybe it's not that economical, but again, it depends more on the regulatory framework rather than the technology aspects per se. The regulatory framework can actually break the economics of the investment, even if the technology is actually something meaningful to invest in.
Okay, very good, super. So now if I can turn to Xavier and ask you some questions. First of all, do you want to maybe introduce your organization and tell us the kind of projects that you're involved with communities in your area?
Sure. So I'm the founder and managing director of XD Sustainable Energy Consulting. We're what I'd call a boutique consultancy specialized in energy efficiency and renewable energy based in West Cork in the south of Ireland. And I have a separate business called Retrofit, which is a software platform to support energy retrofits in homes. We have quite a range of projects in which we engage directly with communities at the local level in the south of Ireland again. In fact, across the country, but on an ongoing basis, we're mentoring a number of sustainable energy communities under a program by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland to support, let's say, sustainable energy action at the local level and leverage the power of community action in that context. And we're generally providing mentoring support, which covers some, let's say, technical aspects, but most of all, it's around organizing, getting people on board, driving projects, and accessing supports from different either local or national government sources in terms of funding and capacity building, training, etc. And in that context, Act4Eco has really tickled my interest in that there is still, despite many years of information campaigns and websites and all sorts of dissemination activities of different projects or institutions, there is still a gap in knowledge and understanding of energy efficiency and renewable energy. And what I thought interesting about the platform is that it goes into quite a lot of detail actually, and is interactive. And as an engineer, I guess I was, let's say, fascinated by the quality of the technical information, but I found that it remained accessible from that point of view. So we've had initial discussions about how we could collaborate and maybe leverage some of the the functionalities of the platform and its content to provide some of the services we're involved in, including Reticus to inform homeowners themselves, and in that I would include social housing bodies who might be managing, a large housing stock. Might be architects or engineers, but typically energy efficiency and renewable energy wouldn't be their priority or first priority, and might have a gap in knowledge and depend on, let's say, the likes of us to give them advice. And I think it's great to be able to direct them to a platform that will help develop their knowledge and their understanding of the different options for them. So that our job, which is to guide them and help them planning their energy renovation campaigns, is made easier.
So, and what at this point in time in Ireland, what kind of reception are you getting? Is it hard to convince people, or do you think it's getting to the stage where people are now convinced that they know they have to do more?
I think we're at this stage where people really understand something needs to happen. They're increasingly motivated and sometimes increasingly militant about it. And I think that's, that's the culmination of many years, as said, of effort in terms of pushing that message at the local and national level. But I think people are increasingly also taking action at the personal level, and not near enough what's required, but it's a good starting point. And I think we're turning the curve. Myself as a consulting engineer in that space, I can see the nature of our clients and the range of clients we're involved with is changing rapidly. And I think what might have been the preserve of very few enthusiasts, 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, is now becoming something that's preoccupying a lot more people. And, let's call it the mainstream, including businesses, who are really conscious increasingly, not just about their energy expenditure, but also about their carbon footprint, are looking for a solution, or whenever they can, starting to invest and to change their behavior. So, I think we're on the crest of a wave, if I can say it like that.
So would you say that there is a very big difference for 10, 15 years ago? I mean, I don't know how long you've been involved in the sector, but was it really very difficult to convince people in the past? Was there a time where you were seen as kind of the bad guy coming in to ask all these questions?
Not the bad guy, I wouldn't think so. But I've been in this business since about over 25 years at this stage, and I came here in Ireland in 2001. And at the time, my job was to, let's say, inform people about solar energy here. And I had to overcome my own, let's say, misinformation around the potential for solar energy before I could talk to people about it and convince them that it's the right thing to do. But, the numbers are there and speak for themselves. And at the time, I remember having to go and find good case studies in Ireland, and there was probably a handful of them across the country in terms of maybe solar water heating system, and a very few businesses involved. Most of them would be, let's say, from the alternative side. That's radically changed. Like, if you can take an example, which is the building regulations in Ireland, they're one of the best or most, let's say, progressive in terms of sustainable energy and across Europe. And they've really transformed the way we're building our homes, the way we supply our heat and electricity increasingly. And it has become a common sight now to see solar panels on homes, especially new ones, but obviously I think in the retrofit sector, it's becoming kind of accepted, I think, generally speaking. So that is a big change from 25 years ago, for sure.
If I can ask you a cheeky question, if you are putting together a set of arguments to try to convince people, which do you think are the ones that are really the most important in changing people's minds? Is it the economic argument? We don't own any energy source and conventional energy sources, so we have to use the alternative ones. or we have to be good to the environment? Which is the one that wins?
Well, in terms of, I'm an engineer. I'm not necessarily a communication expert, but I have a bit of experience in engaging with people at their level. You know, being it a business or a home or in a community, and I can see what my get out car is that it really depends on who you're talking to, and I think the starting point should be to listen and to let them ask the questions, and then you figure out, okay, what's their angle, what's their motivation. But I mean, generally speaking, let's say obviously the financial argument is to stack up to a degree, but I think increasingly people want to do something, and it's about removing the barriers. One barrier is knowledge, and Act4Eco addresses that, and we're trying to do the same with Retrocate and different projects we're involved in. But also access to finance is a big issue. So affordability is a key factor, and providing solutions in that space is equally as important as, let's say, the technical solutions as such. So I think our approach is becoming more sophisticated. When I started this job in Ireland, my job was an engineer and I had to do a bit of everything, and now it's so multifaceted. It's about finance, it's about planning, environmental regulations, it's about having people to install these things. So I think we're at a point where it's going mainstream. That's maybe a nice way to encapsulate it, and it's just going to explode. And I think we've turned the corner from that point of view, and now there's an urgency to get on with the job.
That certainly is a positive message that you're delivering. And now I would like to challenge the two of you again with a sort of a funnier question. What surprises you the most? Or what is the funniest statistic that you have heard lately about energy usage? Is there anything striking? Salim, what do you think? Anything that has surprised you in the last while?
Well, in terms of energy use, not exactly in terms of energy use, but while creating the platform Act4Eco, we've done different pilot tests, workshops, and so on, where we were presenting, of course, the platform and so on, and we were asking them to go through some of the actions. And what's struck me actually in one of the conversations was the fact that there was one person that didn't really knew, it's not, my point is not judgmental, but it was kind of a reminder that there are different levels in terms of the wider population. There were some people that didn't understand how the light bulb that is in the room connected to the environmental impact. Like there was no connection between the two. So that kind of struck me in saying and it kind of reassured me of how important Act4Eco is actually in terms of informing the wider public, whether it is from the very beginning of explaining how electricity is produced, how it has an impact on the environment, and then also just the smart consumers that are really at the edge of technology.
That's a great. I think that's a great story. Actually, that some people are in the situation where they think that it's somehow magic and that you just go to the wall and you flick the switch, but it's just the switch and the bulb. There's nothing else actually entering that equation. Okay, that's a great story. So, Thierry, have you your own little story that has something that has surprised you?
I cannot say I do in terms of.
You're never surprised by anything?
Funny things. No, I cannot say about funny things. If we take the consumer aspect that Salam mentions, it is a tricky thing to discuss the power system and try to break it down and present it to consumers, because it's something that it's outside of our scope as consumers. We don't really care about the energy system and its complexities. What I can tell you is that it's very specific to Greece, for instance, and how energy efficiency is perceived and programmed here, and it's more. It's not so much about the impact, the energy efficiency, and the impact on the power system or the impact in terms of carbon emissions. It's more about a way to keep a market working, the market of contractors and engineers. And this is important, but still there is this missing link between energy efficiency and all the benefits it can provide that's actually missing, starting from consumers and going actually to the planning process, where we plan programs for the next few years in terms of what energy efficiency measures we want to incentivize, etc. That's my experience.
Very good, fantastic. Xavier, how about you? Have you got some special story or some surprising fact that you've picked up in the last time?
I have loads of them. I suppose it may be a little bit out of context, but one of our specialties is to look at local energy planning and, let's say, developing strategies for communities or governments to, to decarbonize essentially. And we start with looking at what's the current situation and how energy is being used, again, in a home or a community or a country. And I think, generally speaking, people associate energy with electricity, and they say, well, okay, that, and that's their first thing. And really, policy in Ireland so far has very much focused on electricity. And then, when you look at the numbers, you realize that heat is actually a much bigger share of our energy consumption than electricity itself. And it's the one that's, let's say, the most difficult and challenging to decarbonize at this stage. And yes, our policy framework is quite weak in that place. And I think that will change, and we'll work towards changing that. And I think we need a lot more, let's say, awareness, but also innovation and programs to drive the decarbonization of heat. And then even more importantly, transport is the first and the biggest energy usage in Ireland. And again, people rarely think about energy when they think about energy, say transport, when they think about energy efficiency or sustainable energy. And it really doesn't figure, generally speaking, in the messaging that goes out there. And the only thing really that's being promoted in that space at the moment is electrical vehicles, and I think that's quite narrow, and that needs to change. So in terms of consumers, I think guiding and informing consumers around their energy consumption for heat, but equally important for transport is going to be very important going forward.
And for anyone who has listened to these interviews and this talk, and who is interested in the topics that we have discussed, we are now going to propose that to insist, in fact, that you do log into the Act4Eco platform, and that you create a login, and that you experience the interactive nature of the platform that we have created, so that you can actually go further than the little discussion that we have had over the last half an hour, and you can explore the platform. So I think the name of the platform is probably going to be provided on screen, and all you have to do is click on that link and create a login, and then you can go and look at the questions that are being answered for you on the website.